Welcome back once again to Chapter 1, Section 2, continuing with our operations with integers. We're going to talk about multiplication of integers. And what do we mean by a factor or a product? Well, short definition is the following. If we take two numbers and multiply them together, the result of that multiplication is a product, and the two numbers that we're multiplying together is a factor. So, for example, let's take a multiplication such as 3 times 7, which we know to be 21. In this case, 3 and 7 are factors. Because those are the two numbers that are being multiplied together. On the other hand, 21, the result of that multiplication, is the product of those two values. Okay. There are some rules dealing with products and factors of integers. They have to deal mostly with signs of these integers. So, if we multiply two integers and they have the same sign, the result will be the sign will be positive. So for example, in part A right here, I'm multiplying negative 7 times negative 12. I know that 7 times 12 is equal to 84. In this case, because they're both negative numbers, our result will be positive 84. Okay. If you don't remember doing longhand multiplication, you could also work it out this way. 2 times 7 is 14. Bring up the 1. 1 times 7 is 7. Plus 1, that gives you 8. Right? So if you remember that kind of thing, that will help. Now, what would happen if it was negative 7 times positive 12? Well, the answer in that case is going to be negative 84 because the two numbers have opposite signs. So our rule for multiplication of integers is if you multiply two numbers together with the same sign, you get positive. If you multiply two numbers together with opposite signs, you get negative. Let's take on negative 10 times negative 6 times positive 4. Well, what do we do with that? Negative 10 times negative 6 we know to be two negative numbers. So these first two, we can just multiply them directly. We're going to get positive 60. But we still have this 4 to carry out, so we're going to now multiply together these two numbers. 4 times 60, well, we could work this out longhand again if we wanted to multiply those two. 0 times 4 gives me 0. 6 times 4 gives me 24. And so my result right here is going to be 240. Well, let's talk about division. Many of the same sign rules that we dealt with in multiplication also apply to division. Division is just the operation that undoes multiplication. So in this case, we're going to say if we take two numbers and divide them, if they have the same sign, negative a divided by negative b, we always end up with a positive result. We call that result a quotient. If we take two numbers and they have opposite signs, so a divided by negative b, or negative a divided by positive b, the result is going to be a negative quotient. So now let's take on a couple of these divisions right here. What happens if we divide 18 by negative 3? The order in which we place these two numbers in our division setup makes a big difference. So this means take the larger number, 18, divided by the smaller number, negative 3. Negative 3 goes into 18. Well, 3 goes into 18 6 times, but because there's a negative sign attached, we have to result with a negative. So a positive divided by a negative, in this case, negative 6 is our result. How about 108? Negative 108 divided by negative 12. Well, since they're the same sign, we're going to use our first rule up there and we're going to end up with a positive value. So it will be the same as if I just took 12 and divided it directly into 108. Well, in this case, 12 goes into 108 how many times? Well, we know it's got to be more than 5. 5 times 12 is 60. But we know it has to be less than 10 because 12 times 10 would be 120. How much less than 120? Well, let's try 9 times. Let's see, 9 times 2 would give me 18. 1 times 9 plus 1 would be 10. So it's going to be 9. And so our result right here will be positive 9. How about this one? What do we do with 0? Well, if we're dividing by 0, then we have a problem. Because we'd have to think, well, how many times could we multiply some number by 0 to get negative 64? The answer is there isn't any. We would call this an undefined value. Now, that's if we're dividing by 0. Boy, that's a terrible way to spell undefined. Let me try that again. Undefined, which is U-N-D-E-F-I-N-E-D, undefined. Now, we could do it the other way around. If I said 0 divided by 64, that would be okay because the result would be 0. We could take 0 times 64 and get 0. But 64 divided by 0, that's undefined. There is no value that makes that true. This is our operations. Good luck with the assignment.